The knock on my bedroom window sliced through the silence of the night, jolting me awake. It felt like I was being ripped from the warmth of sleep. Was I dreaming? I wondered, still half asleep, as I sat up and fumbled around for my slippers. I froze. No, this wasn't a dream. From the direction of the window, I could hear a faint rattling of the glass as if someone or something was still tapping lightly against it. In the stillness of the night, my pounding heartbeat gave away my fear. I quietly approached the window, listening intently. Nothing. Strange. With a trembling hand, I pulled back the curtain. All I saw were the dirty windows and a dried-up cactus on the sill. Nothing else. I glanced outside. Nothing there either. But as I stood there staring into the darkness, I could feel a subtle vibration in the air. Where was it coming from? I couldn't tell. I threw on a robe and shuffled to the kitchen. Lighting a cigarette, I tried to shake off the unease. What am I even worried about, I thought. The windows are old, the frames are rotting in places, and I haven't gotten around to installing proper double-glazed panes. Of course, there's going to be some rattling and strange noises. Our neighborhood in Velnia is usually quiet, but whenever a heavy truck drives by, the windows shake so much it feels like they might shatter. That's probably all it was. I'd seen it happen before. I reassured myself with another drag of the cigarette. Yes, it had happened before, but that night something felt off. Still, I pushed the thought aside. I had work in the morning, and it was already past 3 a.m. I needed to get some sleep. The next day, I didn't think much about the incident. I'd given myself a reasonable explanation, and there was no point dwelling on it. I focused on work, and the day passed like any other. By around 9 p.m., I was walking through the empty courtyards, surrounded by crumbling, Soviet-era apartment blocks in overflowing trash bins. A little further down was the Sunflower Kindergarten, with its creepy tire sculptures of fairy tale characters. Those things always unnerved me, especially at night. During the day, they were just odd, but in the dark, they were downright terrifying. Behind the kindergarten was my building, Block 12, one of those prefabricated 5-story structures that dotted the town. But Block 12 felt especially grim, both in appearance and in the people who lived there. Sometimes I thought my neighbors would gladly kill each other if given the chance. They were unpleasant, especially the ones in my stairwell. The only person I could talk to was Uncle Marek from the 5th floor. He was a simple guy with a knack for fixing things and a liver ruined by homemade vodka. Other than him, I didn't really know any of my neighbors, even though I'd lived there for 6 years. That evening, Uncle Marek was standing by the entrance, a hand-rolled cigarette dangling from his lips. "Evening, Lucas," he greeted me. "Evening, Uncle Marek. How's it going?" "Not bad, just getting some fresh air," he rasped. "Why not at home?" "I've been cooped up all day. Needed to stretch my legs." "You just getting back from work?" "Yeah, Uncle Marek. I'm exhausted. I'd stay and chat, but I need to get going," I said, trying to avoid spending too much time with my slightly tipsy neighbor. On my way up, I ran into Mrs. Kowalska from the 1st floor. She was the complete opposite of Uncle Marek, a perpetually grumpy, overweight woman who seemed to know everything about everyone in the building, most of it pure gossip. There's always someone like her in every building, I thought, as I politely greeted her and hurried up the stairs without waiting for a response. I opened the door to my apartment and stepped inside. All I wanted that evening was to take a shower, drink some tea, and go to bed. And that's exactly what I did. The apartment was soon dark, and I wrapped myself in a blanket, closing my eyes. But just as I was drifting off, the tapping on the window started again. Light, rhythmic knocks, accompanied by a faint vibration. I opened my eyes and listened. What was that? This time I couldn't blame it on a passing truck. The knocks were clear, deliberate, like someone tapping on the glass with their hand. The vibration lasted for about a minute, then everything went quiet. I felt uneasy. I didn't even want to get out from under the blanket to look. It's probably the same thing as last night, I told myself. Two dim streetlights, a bunch of parked cars, the kindergarten, and those creepy tire sculptures. Everything was normal, but I had heard the knocks. I couldn't have imagined it. Was I losing my mind, especially in the dead of night, when the only sound was the ticking of the clock in the apartment? There was no mistaking those knocks. And besides, I lived on the third floor. Who would climb up that high just to tap on a random window? It didn't make sense. The outside wall was smooth with nothing to hold on to. I decided to ask Uncle Marek about it the next day. Maybe he'd heard something too. But exhaustion eventually overtook my concern and I fell asleep. The next morning, I didn't even remember the incident. I overslept and was more worried about being late for work than anything else. I chalked up the past 2 nights to fatigue and my imagination running wild. That evening, as I returned home, I didn't see Uncle Marek by the entrance. As I climbed the stairs, I debated whether to visit him and talk about the knocks or just let it go, but something told me I should check on him. I went home, changed, grabbed a couple of beers from the fridge, and headed up to his place. I knocked on the door, and after some shuffling and the sound of the lock, he opened it. "Hey, Lucas. Evening, come on in," he said, noticing the beers in my hands. "Thanks, Uncle Marek. Mind if I join you?" "Of course not. Just ignore the mess," he laughed, kicking some scattered shoes aside. "So what brings you here? Just visiting, or is there something you need?" he asked. I decided to get straight to the point. "Uncle Marek, something's been bothering me. For the past 2 nights, I've been woken up by these knocks on my window. Then the glass starts rattling like there's a tank driving by outside. I wanted to ask if you've heard anything like that." Uncle Marek sat down at the table and opened one of the beers. "Yeah, actually. Last night I heard something too." "You heard the knocks?" "Well, I was up late fixing a radio for old man Drazik from the first floor. I heard something like tapping coming from the living room. You know how old these windows are? They make all kinds of noises." He lowered his voice as if afraid someone might overhear. I put down the soldering iron and went to check. I turned on the light and he trailed off, visibly nervous. "Look, Lucas, I know I like a drink, but I only had a couple of shots with Drazik. I wasn't drunk. What I saw, it wasn't human." I leaned in, urging him to continue. Someone or something was climbing the building like a damn rock climber. Who the hell would be scaling walls at that hour? But it wasn't a person. It was, I didn't get a good look, but it was grayish green, naked, and crawling up the wall. Its hand touched my window, and that's when the knocking and vibration started. He crossed himself and took a swig of beer. Its hand was huge, like 3 times the size of a normal person's. I saw its shadow out of the corner of my eye, but it didn't look human. I swear, Lucas, I'm not making this up. He looked exhausted, and as much as I wanted to dismiss his story as the ramblings of a drunk, I couldn't ignore the fact that I'd heard the knocks too. "Uncle Marek, who lives below you?" I asked. "Just old Mrs. Novak. You've seen her, right? She's always in that pink headscarf. She doesn't leave her apartment much. She's sick." "Why do you ask?" "No reason. I should probably get going," I said, finishing my beer. "Lucas, whether you believe me or not, be careful. Don't look out the window. Just stay hidden if it happens again." "Yeah, sure. Thanks, Uncle Marek. Good night," I said, forcing a smile as I left. Back in my apartment, I lit a cigarette, feeling uneasy. Part of me thought Uncle Marek's story was nonsense, but another part believed him. That night, as I lay in bed, the knocks returned. This time, they were louder, more insistent. I stayed under the covers, too scared to move. The next morning, I found a grimy handprint on the outside of the window. It was huge, unlike anything human. My hands shook as I stared at it. I couldn't calm down. I took a sedative, but it didn't help much. I called in sick to work and chain smoked, trying to make sense of it all. 3 nights in a row, something had been tapping on my window. But who or what was it? And how was it climbing to the 3rd floor? I decided to visit Uncle Marek again. This time, no one answered the door. Strange. He was usually home. I went down to the 4th floor to talk to Mrs. Novak, but her door was wide open. Her apartment was a mess, clothes scattered, a broken mirror on the dresser. She was gone. On her window was a handprint, just like the one on mine. Over the next few days, neither Uncle Marek nor Mrs. Novak returned. I didn't call the police. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid of getting involved. Then one night, the knocks came again. This time, I set up cameras. What they captured was horrifying. A massive, insect-like creature scaling the wall, its limbs grotesquely long. It shattered the window and climbed inside. I hid in the closet, trembling, as it searched the apartment. Its heavy, rasping breaths filled the room. It stopped right outside the closet and spoke in a guttural voice. "I know you're there." Just as it reached for the closet door, a gunshot rang out. Uncle Marek had come to my rescue. The creature fled, leaping through the broken window. The police arrived soon after. They didn't believe our story, but they let Uncle Marek go with a fine. The creature stopped coming after that, but the emails started. Cryptic invitations to abandoned places. It was taunting me. So here's my advice. If you hear a knock on your window at night, run, don't look back. And if you can't run, arm yourself. Because whatever's out there, it's watching.